Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Coffee with Craig, where we talk about all things firearms, firearms policy, politics, culture, media, you name it, we're talking about it right here on Coffee with Craig. So please take a moment, like and share the program so that your friends can join in the conversation as it's happening. Also, if you haven't already done so, please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook, and make sure in both cases hit the notification button. That way you can get the alerts as soon as these videos go live. Also, help us pay the bills. Visit fpcgear.com. It's fpcgear.com. All sorts of cool Pro 2A swag. T-shirts, hoodies. Well, it's a little hot right now for hoodies, but we got hoodies. We have coffee mugs. We have posters and stickers. All cool stuff. And every dollar that you spend goes right back into the fight for our right to keep and bear arms and to support this program. So you can support the Second Amendment and you can look good doing it. That's fpcgear.com. All right. We all know that, school shootings seem to be like the topic du jour. Whether you're pro-gun or whether you're anti-gun, it seems to be something that a lot of people are talking about. And a lot of it has to do with how do we prepare to keep our children safe? Because ultimately, whether you're anti-gun or you're pro-gun, ultimately people want our children to, when they're at school, we want them to be safe, right? Well, there's a difference and there's a divide in this country about how we go about doing that. You have one group of people that says we're going to keep all law-abiding citizens out of schools, all law-abiding citizens who want to be able to arm themselves and protect students. Yeah, we're going to make sure you can't do that at school. So we're going to make sure you're unable to do that. And then you have another group of people who are law-abiding citizens who say, hey, if we have teachers or we have staff who want to be able to exercise their right of self-defense, but also be able to do so in protecting our students, then we should be encouraging them to do that. In fact, we should go as far as maybe even including them as a part of an active shooter plan. How do we deal with these situations on school grounds? Well, there's one school district, it's a small school district in California, which, by the way, does not allow teachers to be armed or staff to be armed on campus or exercise the right to keep and bear arms on school grounds. But aside from that, that institute that had a training that was, I just want to say that I think people on both sides of this conversation were kind of dumbfounded by. So I wanted to bring back on a friend of the program, Mr. Joe Eaton from Faster Saves Lives. You guys know them. They've trained thousands of teachers and school staff on how to protect our kids on campuses, to kind of talk a little bit about this situation. So with that, Mr. Eaton, welcome to the program.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Excellent. All right. So you had a chance to check this situation out a little bit. You want to kind of fill our folks in on exactly what happened?
Yeah. From the news articles, again, you always have to kind of try to read between the lines in a lot of this. It sounds like there was a school superintendent in California who wanted to run an active killer drill with his district. From the news reports, he tried to make it, in their terms, as realistic as possible by not informing the staff, by including actual people with simulated firearms in the drill. And of course, that concerned a lot of people who were there in the drill and afterwards, the impact that it may have on the kids. So it sounds like, again, he may have had good motivations, but was working outside of his wheelhouse in an area where he probably doesn't have a lot of expertise setting up these kinds of drills, scenarios, and thinking through what the benefits are trying to get out of it, and what the teachable moments are that they should be striving for.
I think there are a couple of things. One, I just want to say I learned something that I'm going to now start to institute from you. You did say active shooter, you said active killer. And so I thank you for that. I want to make sure that I put that into my lexicon. Because once again, we're not just talking about someone who might have a gun, but we're talking about someone who might have a knife, someone who might have any sort of other weapon that they might have on a campus. And a lot of times that situation is the same. So first, I just wanted to thank you. That was a very good catch. At
Yeah,
least you got me.
separate that because, I mean, you and I and the majority of our listeners are very active shooters, but we are not active killers. And that's where the discrepancy is. It's not an issue with the firearms or the tools. It is simply the motivation. It is a crime of murder that these people are committing. And that's something that, you know, we try to do because words are powerful. We've seen this with, you know, the full capacity magazines, the, you know, the evil black rifles. But truly, you've got to address it what it is. These are not just people who are shooting. These are people who are killing in any way, shape, or form that they can. And as you said, violence is violence, and schools have to be prepared to deal with that in whatever form it is.
All right. Now, going back real quick. So, you know, it was funny, you know, this is one of the things that gets me when you have policymakers, and I deal with this all the time in the California state legislature, is you have policymakers who are making decisions out of ignorance. Sounds like such a harsh word, but that's what it is. It's really a lack of knowledge or understanding, or really not having the background and the information to properly think through the consequences of the decisions that they make. And in this case, like you said, it sounded like a guy who wanted to do something, wanted to do it right, wanted to make it realistic so that his staff and students could be properly prepared. The problem is, I mean, he really put a lot of people at risk.
Yes.
The way in which he wound up doing this.
And worse than that, the training probably had a detrimental effect opposite of what he was looking for. Mr. John Benner at Tactical Defense Institute, who developed the curriculum for the Faster Saves Lives, talks about when he was commander of the Hamilton County, which is Cincinnati, Ohio, regional SWAT team. And there was a time that they took every police officer in the entire county, everyone from the newest to the oldest, and ran them through it was a building search scenario. Again, it was the force-on-force decision-making, but Mr. Benner tells it like it is. He says, we simply wasted everybody's time and money because they set it up so they had no chance of success. And all we did was teach every single officer in that county that if they go into a building, they can die. And that is not the outcome that you want from these type of events. You've got to carefully plan them out. You've got to get the teaching points. You've got to design the scenarios so that you emphasize those points. And you've got to show them what they can do right so they can survive and win these situations. Not simply that these are bad situations where everything is going to go wrong and you have no chance of survival. That defeats the purpose of practicing running drills and training.
Oh, yeah, no, most definitely. And that's, you know, the whole idea is to develop, for lack of a better term, a muscle memory, a read, react. If this happens, then this happens. And these are the things that you need to do. And what you don't want in particular in this training situation is you don't want to instill fear in somebody. I mean, the whole goal has got to be to, once again, instill, to reinforce doing the right things. These are the actions that I'm supposed to take. These are the things that I'm supposed to do. And I just don't see how that factored in, or how that was helpful in this situation, or in this particular scenario, and what these guys tried to do. Let me ask you this. So, all right. So in California, you know, obviously firearms are not included as a part of the training in terms of teaching folks what to do if you have a firearm and all of that. So what are some of the things that you think in places where your teachers are not allowed to arm themselves, what are some of the things that you think they ought to be doing as a part of their training?
Well, again, you know, it goes back to the run, hide, fight principle, which again is just a general set of guidelines. It is not a checklist or a specific order. But when you have violence in these events, if you can get away from the events and get out of the area, if it is in another part of the school, studies have shown that is the safest thing to do. And that is what a lot of schools are adopting now, is instead of the lockdown, it is an evacuate the buildings. They also have to be careful on this because it is not an immediate evacuation on it, because we have seen a lot of these killers where they'll use the fire alarms and the other things to get people into one area where they can commit violence against a larger group of people in there. But running and getting out of the danger area is the absolute safest way. And I had a superintendent tell me that, you know, if that happens in his school, he says, I have no problem telling a parent, I don't know where your kid is, but he's not inside the building where the death is. And, you know, as a parent with kids, I can accept that answer. If he can tell me my kid is not in there where the injuries are, I will take it upon myself to go reunite with my kid and make our family whole again. But simply knowing that they've escaped that danger is got to be the first priority. Where you're at, if you have to hide to buy yourself time to get immediately out of the line of sight to not draw attention to you, that's valid also. But hiding as the entirety of the situation simply doesn't work. All of that is doing is allowing them to work at whatever speed they want to eventually get to whoever is in there hiding. And then the fight, unfortunately, is what is being not stressed enough. The ALICE program, which is very popular across the United States, the counter aspect of that, truthfully, has been now dumbed down from not fighting, but, you know, trying to distract them. And, you know, as a teacher or an adult, the sooner that we can pull their focus from killing innocent people to worrying about us or concerned about somebody fighting back, that is a benefit also. But it can't be the totality of the situation. Once you've distracted that person from the innocence, you've got to have a way of finishing that fight and coming out on the upper hand. And if school districts are not permitted to include firearms with their SROs or their staff in there, then they have to come up with other viable solutions. And, you know, it's tough because firearms are the most effective way of dealing with this type of extreme violence. Have trained, competent, and willing people there that can stop the killing as soon as possible. And then the FASTER program also helps them with stopping the dying by having the trauma medical tools and training to start saving lives immediately.
Well, you know, it was funny. The last time we had you on the program, and you made this observation that oftentimes when school staff goes through this sort of training, you know, when something like this goes down, they're the ones that generally on campus are the ones with the experience, not the responding law enforcement officer. They're the ones with the tactical training and understanding of what to do and how to do it. Chances are most of those folks, most of those law enforcement officers who are responding haven't received that kind of training.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what we see in the majority of the districts that send staff and adopt these type of programs. And we encourage them, if they're going to have a resource officer or anyone with a firearm in the building, come out to the FASTER Saves Lives training and get the training, because most of the time the school staff that complete our training are in fact the subject matter experts on this specific type of event in their communities. It takes really a special police officer to go out and seek this type of specialized training and study the history of these events and to work through the scenarios to see what actually happens in these chaotic situations, to look at it from both the responder side and from the murderer side, so that you can see that, yes, if somebody is in a building with an AR-15 rifle, you are still have an advantage if you are competent with your handgun and you can use good tactics, because we see time and time in these events, they are simply there to kill as many people as possible. And that task focus gives you the advantages to use good tactics and have adequate firearm skills and deal with the situations. And, you know, it takes somebody special to devote the time and the effort that unfortunately we don't provide to the majority of our law enforcement officers out there, and very few seek it out on their own.
Well, exactly. You know, most trainers that I know out here are a lot of them are former law enforcement, and they lament how little actual firearms training that their former colleagues or colleagues actually get oftentimes when it comes to firearms. And it's frustrating because we always get this, well, you know, the police are the experts, and I'm sorry, but most of the active shooters or people who are part of they get more training than the average law enforcement officer does. And that's not to put down law enforcement, but just it's a lot of times it's just a function of the job. A lot of times their job hasn't required them to do that.
And yeah, a couple of things on that. Any state we go into, we use the state standard for their police officer qualifications as the standard that we have every one of the school staff pass. But we always take that to a higher level. In Ohio, 80% can still pass the Ohio law enforcement qualification. We hold them to 93% here in Ohio. We did the same thing in Utah. We just did our first class in Utah. We used their state standard, but we held them to a much higher standard. In that class, we had about a third of the class who did not pass the qualification to the faster level of training. But every single school staff qualified to the law enforcement level in that training. And we generally see that time and time again. The ones who we have very few out of the hundreds that we have trained over the years, there has been less than half a dozen that have not qualified to the law enforcement level. But generally, we see about 20% out of our classes who cannot qualify to the higher level we hold the school staff to. And that's, you know, a great example. We had one of our class had 2 resource officers in it this year. They both happened to be there together from separate districts. Both of them came up afterwards after we shot the qualification, and we held them to a higher standard. They said, this is the first time in my law enforcement career. One of them was 26 years. The other one was like 13 years of law enforcement. Said, this is the first time I've ever shot a perfect qualification in my entire law enforcement career. And it's simply because when they go in to qualify, if they are just good enough and they can pass to a mediocre level, they're passed and they're sent on, and nobody spends the time to get them to the level that they can be and should be to. And it really is nice when you get those type of compliments that, you know, the 3 days with you guys have done something that it was almost 40 collective years of law enforcement had not been able to do.
I wish that I could get some of the policymakers that I just hear, oh, we don't want teachers with guns or this, that. I wish they just throw out this rhetoric. We don't want to arm our teachers. They just throw out this rhetoric, and they don't take the time to get to understand this is what the program is. And when they get that, when they hear that, when they I think when they get a chance to see it, they'll recognize that, you know, this is a benefit. This is not something that's being forced on anybody, but it's something that's being made available to people that will benefit their community and benefit their kids. And it's just frustrating because in many cases, I know they care. I just think that they are, the term I would use, they choose to be, they are willfully ignorant. Because, well, it just doesn't fit their narrative.
And not only that, they know it is a whole new segment that they're going to have to educate themselves on, and that's going to be a whole lot of work. And it is a topic that they are interested in, so nobody is looking to take on extra work. We all do enough work in our regular jobs. But you're exactly right. We had over the summer a reporter from the London Times magazine came over, and he actually participated in the class along with all of the school staff that we had, and they just ran the article in the London Times magazine a week or so ago. Unfortunately, it's paywalled, so you have to be a subscriber. We're trying to work out with them so we can share it with our supporters here in the United States. But one of the superintendents that he interviewed on there simply said, you know, I've realized right now that, you know, if violence comes into my school, I'm going into that room with the killer right now. He said, I'm doing it tomorrow, no matter whether we have a firearm with me or not. He said, that is going to happen. He said, all I want to do is have a chance. And by having a firearm and having this training, that gives me a little bit better chance of surviving. And I applaud the reporter. He made a statement in there. He said, I came into this training very skeptical about having school staff with firearms in there. He said, after the 3 days of training and seeing the dedication and seeing the professionalism of this training, he said, it has totally changed my mind, and this is something I think schools should look at. And this is coming from a Brit who generally do not look at firearms in the most positive light.
No, most definitely not. Most definitely not. Well, thank you once again for all the good work that you're doing. Let our folks know how they can find out about more about the program, and if they want to share that information with the educators that they know in the case that they may want to come out and get some training.
Yeah, they can visit the website at fastersaveslives.org. We are on Facebook, Twitter, not doing a lot with Instagram yet, but they can also reach out to us. And if they need us to talk to the school boards, we can. If the school boards want to talk to other school boards, if the police officers want to talk to other police officers, sometimes we're seen as the crazy gun guys, so they want to sit down and have a phone conversation with another superintendent or a principal that's involved. And so that's something we can help them with.
Sounds like a plan, sir. Once again, thank you so very much. We appreciate the work that you guys are doing out there in Ohio and really helping educators all across the country to to be able to protect their students, and we just protect our kids. So once again, thank you for being on the program, and hopefully we'll have you on again soon.
My pleasure. Take care.
All right, take care. All right, everybody. Well, hey, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. We very much appreciate you guys tuning in. We appreciate you liking and sharing the program, letting your friends know about the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. Got to use them or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.